it was less than 100 days then since we saw Georgia take care of business in the national title game. The game was really over before it started against TCU, and Georgia has just taken that momentum, put it in a jetpack, and put it all on the recruiting trail. They are Raiolaing right now. That's a horrible pun, I know, but we're going to, hey, I make no apologies. Low-hanging fruit is low-hanging for a reason. And so to break it all down, Dylan Raiola, the ripple effect. Now you got USC, you got Nebraska. Where do they go to now? Bringing on the man, the myth, the legend, national recruiting analyst for On3, Josh Newberg. Josh, how we doing, brother?
We're rocking in Raiola over here, JD.
It's so bad, but it's like it's right there. Are we really just not going to use it once or twice throughout this segment?
I don't know. On a tee, I'm going to knock it out of the park.
You know what I'm saying? You got to just hit dingers. When it's teed up like that, you got to hit dingers. Josh, we're going to talk about Nebraska and USC here in just a second, but I want to just pose this one for you. Dylan Raiola committed to Ohio State earlier in the cycle, decommitted, obviously now has given his pledge to the Dogs. Why should fans feel like this one is going to stick when it comes to Dylan Raiola and his commitment to Georgia?
Because it's his second commitment, and I think at this point, quarterbacks across the country in the 2024 class have made their decisions. They're locked in. If he is to open it up, I mean, anywhere he goes is at a top program is going to have a quarterback committed. I mean, at this point, I think that he opened his recruitment up in December from Ohio State, and at this point, I think he's locked in. So much of the class is predicated on a quarterback, and Dylan Raiola chose Georgia knowing that they're going to build this class around him. And if he were to choose another school, it would be down the road, it would hurt the class that comes in with him. So I think Raiola making his decision right before the important summer months show you that this was well thought out, it was strategized, he's locked in, and I think he's going to be a great peer-to-peer recruiter for Georgia this summer.
Dude, you said it. Like, you turn on the highlight tape, and he looks like the elastic Spider-Man toys that used to be floating around. I feel like, I don't know if kids still play with toys anymore, but he's like rolling left, throwing right, like the awkward arm angles, like every single scouting term that's cliche that you want to throw at him, I feel like those fit. So if I'm a receiver watching at home, I'm like, yeah, I might want to go play with Raiola. Yeah, I might want to go catch missiles from that dude. Is there anybody early on in the trail who you're like, hey, keep an eye on this guy. Keep an eye on this guy. He might want to come and play with Raiola. Anybody that comes to mind there?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Georgia was already heavily involved in five-star wide receiver recruitments of Mike Matthews and Ryan Wingo. But just recently, the number one wide receiver in America, Jeremiah Smith, has locked in an official visit to Georgia this weekend. And I think Dylan Raiola, there's a great chance that Raiola is going to be on campus with them. Now, remember, like you said, Raiola reopened his recruitment. He was a one-time Ohio State commitment. Now he's going to get Jeremiah Smith wasn't committed when he was committed, but you get the point. Jeremiah Smith is on Ohio State's commit list. Dylan Raiola, fresh off his commitment to Georgia, is going to try to take a crack at flipping him this weekend. Now, I don't expect anything to go down in terms of a direct flip in the coming days, but these months of the summer, this is where things, kind of sort themselves out a little bit. So let's see what happens. Jeremiah Smith's also going to take an official visit to Florida, and there's a couple other that he could also schedule. So Jeremiah Smith, while he's committed to Ohio State, the number one wide receiver in America, guess what? He's looking at Georgia now, too.
He threw out the thinking emoji. After Raiola committed, threw out the thinking emoji out there. Like, maybe I will take a little extra look at Georgia. And then he deleted the tweet. So listen, I mean, I'm not like a Twitter scientist, but if I'm just looking at this thing from the outside, feels like Georgia may be getting a little bit more buzz, but that official visit will be huge. So Georgia, super set, and they're going to recruit well, even more so with Raiola now. It's a big recruiting tool, so that's like the first wave of this ripple. The other part of this now is the two schools that were after him in Nebraska and USC. Like you said, the musical chairs game of, okay, we got to get our quarterback in this class. They're both now going on offense. Where do these schools look, Josh?
Yeah, the top QB domino falls with Dylan Raiola off the board to Georgia. And yeah, now what happens to Nebraska and what happens to USC? Okay, so for USC, they're going to pick up the pieces. They'll be just fine. They got Malachi Nelson, a five-star that they signed in 23, already on campus. And it's Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley's going to have his pick of the litter. He's going to go and he'll probably watch a little senior film. Maybe if they get somebody on campus, they'll go all in on this summer. But I think Lincoln Riley can afford to kind of sit back, wait, see kind of what develops with the QB dominoes, as we say. And then it comes down to Nebraska. It's a heartbreaker, JD. It is a real heartbreaker because it's not the same setup there in Lincoln, Nebraska as you have at USC with Lincoln Riley. Matt Rule's entering his first year. He had a crack at the number one quarterback overall, but it wasn't just because the number one QB was interested. There was family ties. He's a legacy prospect. He went there a couple times on some unofficials in January and really got the fan base buzzing. And I don't think he was trolling. I don't think he was doing anything outside of, hey, he's genuinely interested in Nebraska. He's checking them out multiple times, but there were some vibes out there that it was just meant to be. The story was written. It was going to be Matt Rule's first year. He was going to go out and sign the number one quarterback in America to bring this ship, to right the ship. And it was just too good to be true, though, JD. In reality, Nebraska finds themselves heartbroken, and they're not exactly in a position to pick up the next great quarterback in this class that's uncommitted is at number 7, Elijah Brown. He's out of California, and I think he's going to go to Stanford. Then you go to Michael Van Buren at 12. I got him pegged to Oregon. And now you can see they're sliding way down there to find their next best option at Nebraska. And that's why this one's such a heartbreaker, because it's not like they can just pick up the pieces and say, hey, let's go on to the next great QB. You know, they're going to have to lick their wounds a little bit. Now, not very long because summer months are here, but they're going to have to lick their wounds and kind of go back to the drawing board at quarterback.
No, you said it perfectly, Josh. Quick plug. Josh has a recruiting show on this very platform, the On3 YouTube channel. Subscribe right here because he's covered this thing, since its infancy. He's been all over the Raiola recruitment, been all over the QB dominoes. So lock it in right here. Josh bringing the heat every single week. Make sure you're locked in right here. But Josh, you were saying it, man. The vibe is in Lincoln. There was a point in time where you and I were talking in the office and we're like, dude, Nebraska, if they land Raiola, will the CFB world just short circuit for a second if Matt Rule steps in there his first year on the job, not even his first season on the job, first few months on the job, and lands the quarterback in 2024? Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But
it felt like it was there on the doorstep when Dylan Raiola made those 2 back-to-back unofficial visits on his own dime in January. He showed up at the basketball game. They were throwing up the bones. We had Sean Callahan from Husker Online on here. The buzz was there. It was real. We're not just making this up. It felt like Nebraska. You and I kind of said this off air. Wow, they're going to do this.
Yes.
And it looked like the number one quarterback in America, but Kirby Smart didn't write that script. He ends up a dog. He's at Georgia. He'll be on campus this weekend in Georgia recruiting, who already been stacking talent on top of talent, is going to have an unbelievable group of recruits on campus this weekend. We'll just have to see if newly committed QB Dylan Raiola is also there.
it's just like a thing where now the G for Georgia, the brand itself, recruits itself. Like how Alabama essentially signed a number one class with basically no coordinators, like Saban just being Saban, the brand just being the brand. It kind of feels like Georgia is moving into that rarefied air of you just know what Georgia's going to be with how they're going to win, with how they're going to develop, with guys that they have drafted. That's kind of how it feels like Georgia is right now, Josh.
Nothing lasts forever. It felt like Nick Saban's reign was going to be forever, but in reality, nothing, especially in college football, lasts forever, and change is inevitable, and maybe we are seeing the groundwork of the next great dynasty being built, and the only way to sustain a dynasty is through recruiting in that constant flow of talent through your program, and right now, nobody's doing it better than Georgia.
Nobody's doing it better than Georgia. You absolutely hit it on the head. Josh, I want to ask you this one more question before we let you go here. Ryan Puglisi is another quarterback of the four-star variety. I believe he's the number 6 quarterback in the entire country, also committed to Georgia, out of Connecticut. Now, we had Scott Schrader on the On3 Roundtable, and we asked him about the Raiola commitment and what that meant for Georgia and what it means for USC. And he's like, hey, Lincoln Riley at one point in time was talking to Ryan Puglisi. Is that somewhere that USC looks? Nothing's final till pen meets paper.
You know, it is possible. You talk to Ryan Puglisi or anybody around Ryan Puglisi. I was talking with Chad Simmons yesterday, and it sounds like he's just saying all the right things in terms of welcoming the competition for Dylan Raiola. And now, yes, USC is one of those spots. There's not many that don't have a premier QB already committed. USC does not, so it would make sense that they might pursue him. Charles Power, very high on Ryan Puglisi, ranked number 6 overall in the On3 rankings. So when he made his decision to Georgia, he knew that Raiola's recruitment was happening. He had plenty of opportunities to reopen this thing, but never did. Dylan Raiola jumps on board, and Ryan Puglisi hasn't. There's no movement there. He hasn't given up anything in terms of that he's going to reopen this thing. So while I don't expect it, he is a name to keep watching. Ohio State was also heavily involved with Puglisi before they landed Aaron Nolan, but now with Nolan on board, do they double back on Puglisi or not? Most likely though, if he were to open his recruitment up, he would have to go battle it out with somebody as good or just, better than Dylan Raiola.
Yeah. No, I think that's on the money. And I've loved everything that I've heard about what he has been saying around this. Like you said it, Josh, you're going to have to compete anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get to campus, like stars, rankings, all that's phenomenal. And Shannon Terry said it. It's a reflection of what you've done. But when you get to college, that's when we find out exactly who you are and what you're going to be going forward. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch. Y'all, follow Josh on Twitter.
Do it.
Subscribe to this channel because he has a banger of a show multiple times a week. So lock it in right here. Josh, we appreciate you, man. We'll do this again soon, brother.
All right. See you, JD.
The man, the myth, the legend. Nobody better. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.